today's program is how to bring out the best in people, but the fact of the matter is, well, at least I'm assuming, that you all do quite well with most people most of the time. Is that true? So really, this program isn't about most people most of the time. It's about those special few. And how do we bring out the best in those people even when they're at their worst? Now, wait a minute. What's that sound? That's the sound of your brain when you're dealing with people you can't stand. How many of you can think of one person that you just can't stand? Put your hand. Right, buddy. How many of you can think of two people that you think, uh-oh? All right, be honest. How many of you are that person? That can be fair. So we're going to talk about how to get the best in people, even at their worst. But before I get into this, I have a confession I'd like to make. And my confession is this: I actually really like the people that drive you crazy. Well, I do, and for a reason. They've been very good to me and my family. There's even a poster now. Just keeps on going. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So, if you can remember nothing else from what I tell you today, and I hope that's not true, if you remember everything I tell you, but if you remember nothing else, please remember this one thing. Next time somebody is pushing their buttons and rattling their chains, just say to yourself, well, at least it's good for Rick and his family. All right. How many of you know somebody that can deal with a person that you can't deal with, and it's no big deal for them? Quick show of hands. So that means it's possible. That means there's something they're doing attitudinally, something they're doing on the inside that allows them to adapt to what's happening on the outside in a more effective way. If you know someone like that, my advice is ask them, when that happened, what did you do on the inside that allowed you to maintain your sanity, and then model that. But I'm saying change your attitude, and I will tell you a good part of what I've come to talk to you today about is how to do that, and here's why. Because like I said at the very beginning, most of you know how to deal with most people most of the time. You have communication skills, you have resources, you know all kinds of things. The trick is to be able to apply what you know when you most need it. And that's a matter of your internal stability. I call it changing your attitude, and it is a necessary prerequisite to making the fourth choice. How many choices are there? 4. The fourth choice is you change your behavior. That means you change what you're doing so they have to adapt to you. What do you want from yourself is a hard question. It is. Most people haven't given it that much thought. I mean, really, the next time that button gets pushed or that chain gets yanked, how do you want to look at that situation? What do you want to say to yourself? What do you want to feel in the presence of that predictable thing? Now, just as a generalization, I'd say, how about composure? Because you have resources. If you could just stay calm, chances are you could access those resources. So how to stay calm in the middle of a storm? How to stay calm when people are whining, yelling, shooting ideas down? How do you stay calm? Well, I'd like to introduce you to a little concept called, that I learned, by the way, as a result of being the father of a teenage girl once upon a time. She's now 33 years old, doesn't mind me sharing this story, but this was right at that moment in her life when she went from my teenage daughter to my teenage daughter. Okay, so anybody remember that moment specifically? And it's called conflict aikido. And I know about this because my wife is a martial artist. So, which means we do not fight, but no, not fight. But here's the thing. So my daughter, she suddenly becomes a teenage girl, and a whole group of people discovered she was on Earth simultaneously. Didn't even know, like 2 weeks earlier, she was on the planet. Suddenly they all do. And I mean, you know who I'm talking about, right? Teenage boys. They were on the phone, they were on the doorstep, they were everywhere. And having been a teenage boy once, I didn't care for any of it. Now, my father, when he went through this moment in his daughter, my sister, his daughter's life, he thought his job was to get in between her and them. But it's a different time in the world. And I was thinking, why should I have to do that? My daughter should be able to protect herself. My wife's a martial artist. So I went to my wife and I said, oh, I got this great idea. Let's get Aiden lessons in Kung Fu, Karate, Judo, and Jiu-Jitsu. And she said no. And I was like, all right. Now, has somebody ever said no to one of your great ideas? You ever had that happen? I'm now going to tell you the best response to no to one of your great ideas. The response is, okay, what do you suggest? Immediately. Okay, what do you suggest? Because here's a funny thing, man, I know about human beings. We are, psychologist Ellen Langer puts it, cognitive misers. We conserve thought energy whenever possible. We really do. We'd rather not think that much. So if you turn it over to somebody, something like, I don't want to think about it. No, we'll do your thing. That's something worth knowing about. What do you suggest? What was that thing you said? Let's do that. And frequently, that is what you get when you turn it around on somebody. That isn't what happened with my wife. Linnea said to me, let's get her lessons in Aikido. I'm like, what's that? Well, there was a class in town taught for teenagers by a very small little man. This guy was like 4 feet tall. The kids towered over this guy. And yet when he told them to sit, they all. When he told them to stand, they all. And when he went, they got really. And that's not easy with a room full of teenagers. So it got my attention when he asked the largest parent to try to knock him down. And there was a very large parent there. It was a real big guy, little guy test. The guy was like 6'13", weighed a couple tons. Here's this little guy. The guy tried to knock him down, and no matter how hard he tried, he always wound up looking like this. And the little guy reminded me of a traffic cop on a one-way street. Right this way. When I was a little kid, I failed every big guy, little guy test I ever took. I wanted to know, and I blurted out to my wife's embarrassment, but I could not contain myself. How are you doing that? And he stopped, and he looked at me, and he said, grasshopper. He said in Aikido, there are 3 stages. 3 stages in Aikido. Accept, then blend, then redirect. Accepting means it's not the time to have an opinion about what they're doing. Somebody throws a right hook at you, and you go, I'm not good with right hooks. That is what it is. Accept it. Accept the unacceptable. That doesn't mean you agree with it or approve of it. It means you acknowledge that things are what they are, so you don't squander energy fighting the way it is. Because if you can get on the same footing with what's happening, you can move with it. And that's what he said blending was all about. We'll talk more about it in a little while. He said blending is moving in the same direction. So if somebody's coming at you, you don't turn your back to get away, or back away. In both cases, you can get hurt. You actually begin moving in the same direction. That allows you to take charge over what's directed at you and redirect it where you want it to go, that direction that I talked about a few minutes ago. Does that make sense to you? Accept, blend, redirect. You don't waste time fighting what is. But how do we accept the unacceptable? Well, I'm going to offer you a few attitude adjustments. And I'm not talking about happy hour at bar either. Attitude adjustment. The first attitude adjustment is where you change your thoughts. You change what you're saying to yourself so that you're not fighting or withdrawing from what's happening. Something you can say to yourself that encourages you instead of discourages you. And you can do this in really intense moments. I mean, I learned this from my friend Max. At the time of the story, my friend Max was 83 years old. A wonderful but frail-looking gentleman, kind of small, thin, and 83. And he couldn't make ends meet on his fixed income. He wound up taking a part-time job at a fast food restaurant. When he told me he was going to work at a fast food place, I was like, Max, you gotta be kidding me. That doesn't seem right. He was like, you live as long as I do, you learn to roll with life. Life is full of the unexpected. So I decided to show up at the fast food place on his first day of work. To offer a little moral support to my friend. And when I got there, he's such a nice guy. He said, Rick, I gotta work. But if you have a seat at the table by the door, I'll join you on my break in about 15, 20 minutes and we'll talk. So I go and I sit down. I see this huge guy walk into this fast food place. I mean, this guy was scary. This guy's tattoos get tattoos. That's how intense this guy was. And he was unhappy with his Happy Meal. And of all the people he could express his displeasure to, who do you think he targeted? Max, this wonderful, frail-looking gentleman. This guy is in his face, jabbing his fist at him, and jabbing his finger at him, and cussing up a storm. And I'm sitting at this table by the door, and part of me wants to rush to my friend's defense. Have you ever felt like that? I mean, part of me wants to tell that guy, you, back off! Most of me remained seated wishing my wife was there because she got the whole part. But Max didn't leave me or my wife. He had this totally under control. Now, this is what I saw him do in my seat by the door. No matter what horrible, rotten, loud thing that guy said to Max, Max nodded his head, kind of like he agreed with it. He's like, no matter what the guy said. And at some point, the guy used up every rotten thing he could think of. And he got silent for a moment, and then Max said these words. He said, well, thank you, young man, for being honest with me about how you feel. And that freaked that guy right out. He left, and Max comes over, and he sits down with me, and I am shaken, not stirred, and he is as cool as a cucumber, and I go, how did you stay that calm? And Max laughs, he goes, Rick, I just told myself that that young man was doing the best he could with the limited resources he had. You feel the power of that? You get it? And look, I'm guessing he practiced that a few times in his life, so he was really good at it, and he knew where to go. That's what I mean. You got to know what that direction is. What do you want from you? And that's an example of changing your thoughts. And here's something else you can do. Get your perspective back. Change your point of view. Go to a different place in time and space to put it in perspective. I learned this from my dad. You know, it took me 6 cars to learn how to drive in high school. That's how I got into scrap art and steel recycling. I had a bit of an affinity for scrap, but it took my dad 6 cars to learn how to help me learn how to drive. Because I'll never forget that 6th time when I called home from the scene of the accident. And my dad answered the phone, and I said, Dad, this hurts me more than it hurts you. I remember that one. But I was driving down the road, minding my own business, and somebody wrecked the car. And on the other end of the phone, I heard my father do something brand new. I heard him breathe. Everybody breathe in and let it go. My dad said, Rick, is anyone hurt? Can you hear what he did right there? He asked himself the question, what's the real issue here? Is it human life or scrap metal? I thought then I was going to be. But then I heard my dad breathing, and everybody breathe in and let it go. And then he said, 100 years from now, what difference will it make? Now, was he saying that to me or to himself out loud? What do you think? That's right. He said that to himself out loud because afterward he felt compelled to say a number of things to me. But my father had finally learned his lesson.